So Bitcoin dumped nearly 8% in 30 minutes yesterday, and we've seen a lot of news coming out about what's happening with the Bitcoin ETF. Essentially what happened yesterday is a crypto firm called Matrixport put out a report. So the sudden drop in price was nothing but a panic reaction from investors thanks to the emergence of a report from Matrixport, and the publication took a negative stance about Bitcoin and price and ETF approval. Essentially, they were saying that the SEC or the US regulatory system was going to decline these ETF requests in the coming days, but that was just a bunch of really nonsense. If we have a look at the price, it absolutely dumped it. And the funny thing is that the exact company that reported on this initially took this negative response, right? They said SEC was going to reject it and Bitcoin was going to go down and all of this fear essentially. But the funny thing is that they countered themselves and then claimed that Bitcoin was heading to $50,000. So a ploy of manipulation, even for crypto, that is just so plain and obvious, because these co-founders and these big firms essentially got together and were like, yep, let's put out this report and short Bitcoin into support levels towards 40,000. And that's essentially what they did. I'm sure they've nearly all had orders towards the low 42,000 to 41,000 as they got some huge gains, I can just imagine. And then they simply put out another report saying, oh, our last one doesn't actually mean anything, and we didn't mean what we said by SEC seeing regulation rejection. So essentially they're just all bullshit, and it's kind of disappointing to see a little bit, but that's the nature of crypto and what Bitcoin is. Essentially, there's no regulation on it, so it's hard to really pin these people down and go for market manipulation. However, the report was the main reason for the crash, and it was titled "Why the SEC Will Reject Upcoming Spot Bitcoin ETF Applications." However, the thing they didn't seem to understand is many people are disagreeing with them, and many top analysts, including senior Bloomberg analyst who says, "We have heard nothing to indicate anything but approvals for a spot Bitcoin ETF." So essentially, people are just calling them out on their bullshit, because they just tried to manipulate, and they did it pretty successfully with $550 million in liquidations in the space of 4 hours. All this hype about Bitcoin ETF and Bitcoin spot approval, it's going to come to a climax in the next couple of days. So if we can see here, the scheduled approval date is the same, targeted between 8th and 10th of January. So that is in 4 to 6 days from where we are right now. So within the next week or so, we're going to see some sort of major movement, and that's dependent on whether this report comes out. For the meantime, Bitcoin is sitting at just over $43,000. It looks like we found some support at 43,000 since this flash crash. However, the thing I want to note is the lack in volume. There is just no volume here since we've seen this dump. Now that's to be understood because all these shorts, right, they've started shorting towards these highs, looking at 45,000, and then they've obviously taken profits on the way down, and right now we're in a predicament where bulls don't really want to do anything because they're scared about this SEC rejection, and then the shorts have already closed most of their positions, so they're sort of waiting on the sidelines, and that's why we've seen little to no volume within the last couple of just in the last couple of 15 minutes. I'm sure this will change with time. However, I think we're going to consolidate a little bit on where we are right now. It seems that we were priced in for this spot approval just because the fact that initially, as one report comes out claiming some kind of rejection and negativity, Bitcoin immediately crashes. So it seems like everybody was sort of on edge, ready for this sort of bad news, and that's why we've seen a lot of volatility, because the spot ETF had already been priced in at 45,000. However, if we do get that news in the next couple of days and it's really, really positive, or it doesn't even have to be something super out of the ordinary, just if they say, hey, we're going to approve this, I'm sure Bitcoin will easily head towards targets of 50,000. It looks like 45,000 was priced in. So if we have a look at the 1-day chart, we can see a little bit more of what I'm talking about. If we reset the scale here, it's obvious that this massive wick down was just due to manipulation. Bitcoin needs overhead targets of 50,000, and that is where we're going to find ourselves if we do see some kind of approval. I'm sure we'll pump up there. Now, while I do say that, I imagine that Bitcoin is going to dump again, just because the fact that in the last since November, we've gone up nearly 60% in the space of 3 months. I'm sure that people are it's going to be easier to manipulate at these higher prices towards 50,000. So if we do see this SEC approval within the next couple of days, I'm sure we get that initial pump when that report comes out, and that will see us head towards over highs of 46,000. In the meantime, I see us consolidating at 43,000 and then sort of finding base ground at 44 to 45,000 as more bulls start to hop back in a little bit, because they're waiting for this approval. In conclusion, essentially, this spot ETF is going to be a make or break for the next move. If we see them say, yes, let's go, things are going to pump towards 50,000. If